Time for another draftphysics.com, debatephysics.com also. Video presentation. And it's just so true. Really. Physicists, they have to take some responsibility. You're just saying, well, they've all been taught this crap. They've heard these stories, these wacky theories that the physicists have. And, they just keep buying it rather than saying, let's see if we can figure out what the hell they're talking about and why the hell they're saying that. And, but no, they don't do any reasonable dissection of the gibberish to see if maybe, they got something a little bit off. So again, we're going to talk about this. It's such a simple idea, right? You're just going to drop a thing in gravity. Okay, and so what has been observed by Galileo and other people is this famous kind of thing where it doesn't matter what the mass is. So it can be a big giant thing, or it can be a little thing, and it's going to fall at the same rate if you don't let floating in the air disturb it any. These two things will fall at the same rate, indicating that whatever, they're collecting it proportionally, because the thing they also know, they know it as an absolute fact that, these two things are just sitting there harmless, not moving. And then I allow them to fall. And when they fall, when they hit the ground, this one is going to make a big, giant pile of, stuff is going to happen, energy. And this is going to have tiny energy. So in this process, it's so obvious, that somehow whatever these things have done, whatever has happened to them by being allowed to be pushed or whatever, pulled by some mechanism, the force, right? We're talking about the force, the ultimate of the forces, the force of gravity. Oh, can't see that. It's just irritating. So they fall at the same rate. So what must be happening is they're collecting, whatever this gravity stuff is, this one collected more of it because it has a bigger mass. So the mass is just completely equatable to like a sail. And then it just collects more wind. Big sail, big collector of wind, little sail, little collection of wind. And the inverse is true, that the bigger mass is harder to push in the sense that there's more mass to move. So the two perfectly compensate. Always something. All right, back. So look, this is really, Galileo went through all of this stuff, discovered it, more than 300 years ago. So these things are going to fall at a rate. And so even though Galileo didn't have the number, he pretty much discovered it. He did. It's 9.8 meters of distance, per 1 second. So every 1 second, not multiple seconds, not seconds squared. So modern physics writes this as 9.8 meters per second squared. And it's just wrong. And what that means is that, frankly, it's really not going to fall 9.8 meters. That's going to be its velocity. That's what it gains as velocity, but it doesn't gain that as distance. As distance, it's only going to be 4.9. Actual distance in 1 second. So the first second, that's how far it falls. And in the next 1 second, it'll do this, 3 units of that. So it's 3 times, the 4.9. Now, if you sort of think about this, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 2 units of time, So you can sort of see that, hey, wait a minute, if I square the 2, the time, I'll get the number of these units of distance, the 4.9. So it says to you basically, so I put a 1/2 in front of the 9.8 because it's really 4.9 actual meters that are added every second. And you can sort of understand that, yes, this is all gravity gives you in the first second. The new force. The force is hitting, it's giving it that in 1 second. And then it gives it one more of that in the next second. Okay, just one more of 4.9. These two here are just a consequence of the fact that you're going 9.8. So you've already acquired a velocity. The force has already acted on you. You've already got that force. And that force is going to give you distance that's essentially for free. You don't have to add any more force. If you didn't add any more force, you just keep going 9.8 from right here. If you could stop gravity and just let it keep going, it would go 9.8. And it's only going to be going 19.6 here. So this is all it actually added, was this little piece. It just added 2 units of 4.9 in real distance added. And the other 9.8 in distance was just a consequence of the velocity you acquired. And the same thing would happen here. In the next unit of time, you would go 5 more units. 4 for free, and only 1 that you'd have to pay for. Well, you can't see that. Yeah, way down there. Okay, yeah. So that's the actual fact. That's the truth. And they pervert it to think that the distance is in control and that the time is somehow a square root of the distance, when no, the distance is just a consequence of the fact of this relationship about the fact that you're accruing free velocity. Here you got this big giant chunk of free velocity, here you got this littler chunk, and the free velocity is what 2, 4, 6, 8, that's the one keeps increasing. And you're just adding this little bit each time. With each second, you're just adding 4.9 of new capacity, of distance, of acceleration. Acceleration, wrong word, because it's 4.9 meters to gain, okay, the 9.8 extra. And you're just gaining 9.8 per unit of time. 1 unit of time equals a 9.8 increase in your velocity. And that's all there is. There isn't any F equals ma or mgh. Okay, it's not about your height. It's about the time. The time tells you how much energy you have. So I mean, mgh is just so obviously wrong and stupid. It gets wrong answers, and they never have to account for that fact. So you can't keep saying it. Please show me any of your calculations getting the right answer for the actual amount of energy something has, because mgh is not going to be the right answer. That means that mgh is telling you that the 1 pound dropped from 4 units of distance, which is only 2 units of time, which is only 2 units of velocity, has 4 units of energy, and therefore has the same energy as 4 pounds dropped from just 1 unit of distance or 1 unit of time. And it doesn't. 4 pounds is more. 4 pounds dropped 1 foot is more weight hitting the ground than 1 pound dropped 4 feet. And it's just a fact, and they will not account for it by proving that not to be true. They'll never prove that it's 4 pounds dropped 1 foot is the same as 1 pound dropped 4 feet. They'll never show you evidence because it doesn't happen. And they'll never show you evidence of something going twice as fast having 4 times the energy, or something going 3 times as fast having 9 times the energy, or something going 4 times as fast having 16 times the energy, because it doesn't collect it. It can't get it, especially from gravity. It can't do it because gravity doesn't work the way they think. Gravity is a stream. Now, I guess I'll erase here and provide a tiny bit more, but what's the point, right? Really, you're all belligerently stupid, and you wish to stay that way, and there's not much that can be done to fix the problem, I guess. You're religious kooks. You're devoted to some lie and nonsense, and you will not be moved from your stupid and ignorant condition. All right, speaking of the stupid and ignorant, so this is a little clip from a recent physicist Michael video. So it's all just the contrived math, bullshit equations. You can see in the equation the little half here. The half is only there because, yeah, it's 4.9 meters of distance per 1 unit of time. And so by squaring the units of time, you can get how many units of distance you will travel. But you didn't do work for each one of those units of distance. You're not collecting energy per unit of distance. You're collecting energy per unit of time. So although this is technically correct, it's wrong in the sense that this is just representing, it's kind of showing you that time is controlling the distance. The distance isn't controlling the time. And it's certainly not controlling the energy. And this is just the square root thing. Why would you start with v squared equals? Why wouldn't you just say v equals? Because then he has to square root this. And he's only square rooting it again because of the time factor. The distance is the square of the time. All right. So just really, it's so shenanigan-y. All right. So I'm just going to play this part because he's just going to say the magical g equals 9.8 meters per second squared. Now, when I was a kid, they just said 9.8 meters per second, so I don't know when it became, controlling where they used this square second. I don't know who the first person to say squared seconds was, but it's just wrong. There's no such thing in the first place as a second squared. And what does it even mean? It's the real ratio is 9.8 to 1. If you use some other number besides 1 second, you have to change the 9.8. It's a ratio. It's a ratio. It isn't going to reflect reality if you use any other number except a 1 there. If you have any other number in front of that little s squared except a 1, you have the wrong ratio. You have lied about what gravity is. So it is not a squared second. It is just a 1 second. And so it's just such a lie. It's 9.8 per 1 second. All right. I mean, it's just probably the biggest lie in physics, right? I mean, it's just so an obvious canard, an obvious shenanigan. Absolutely no reason to square that second. It's 1 second. I mean, 1 squared is nothing. I mean, okay, it doesn't work anyway. But it's a 1 second. It's explicit. It has to be a 1. You can't put some other number there without changing the 9.8. If I make it 2 seconds, then I have to make it 19.6. If I make it a half second, I have to make it 4.8. I have to change the number if I change that S into anything other than 1 second. Oh, this is such a lie.
Be 9.8 meters per second squared. We call this value little g, and I will...
So he just said it. You didn't hear it, but he said it. This is all that matters to me, is he said it.
Actually measure this value of g with an experiment. And this has some interesting consequences. If this be 9.8 meters per second squared, we call this value little g, and I will link a video where
So it is not Newton's equation. It's not Newton's math. Newton never said any of this crap. It's all just bullshit they made up, okay? Newton clearly stated, all right, that, force equals the change in your momentum, okay? It's proportional. Change the force, double the velocity. Triple the force, quadruple the velocity. None of this squaring crap. So again, it's all a big fat lie against Newton's physics.
Actually measure this value of g with an experiment.
Right, and no big deal, okay? I mean, there's lots of ways you can measure it because, yes, it is a very consistent and reliable force. And that's sort of the point, that all of this crap, these special equations, only work under one circumstance, and that is gravity. So they shouldn't pretend that they do anything else because it's really just a gravity. Because there is no other force that we can interact with on the scales of gravity. So if you use magnetism, for example, the acceleration won't be constant. You can't say 9.8 meters per second because the distance, as soon as the distance changes, your proximity to the magnet changes just a little bit, the ratio changes. It's not 9.8 anymore. It's 17, and then it's 400, and then it's 600, and it just keeps increasing as you get closer and closer. And the reason why we can do this with gravity is because gravity is like a big giant magnet, and so the change in the 9.8 meters of the surface of the Earth is a huge giant hunk of space, a mile worth, okay, where it's still 9.8. It doesn't change from 9.8 until you go a great deal of distance in either direction, down or up. So that's why we can play this game, that there's something called a constant force. But the key to that whole thing, the key to this constant force nonsense, is you have to also recognize that it's a constant force in units of time, which indicate clearly that it is just like wind. Okay, wind blows, and again, it's like collecting it with the sail. The problem with wind is the wind is 30 miles per hour, okay, and your velocity might be 12, okay, so there's a huge correlation between the two. So the wind, okay, doesn't have compared to the velocity of, say, the boat, it doesn't have an infinite almost speed, okay. So the fact is that, again, your rate, the rate of how much gain in velocity you're going to get isn't going to work, because it's really not going to be the same gaining, because your differential between the wind speed and your speed, as that changes, your capacity to gain velocity decreases. So as you start going close to the same speed of the wind, right, I'm going 29 miles an hour, it's really hard, okay, to get that 30, all right. It gets harder and harder for the wind to give you more and more speed as you get closer to the speed of the wind. And you can make this argument for just about any pushing force, any mechanism that pushes. Now the trick is okay, so with gravity, gravity's going the speed of light, okay? The force is pushing at the speed of light. So it's a very fast force. So the differential is millions of times, which means that there is no decrease in the capacity of you to be pushed, because you're a tiny little speck on the spectrum of velocity, all right? So the differential will never become significant. I mean, even if you're going 10,000 miles an hour, you're still just a speck compared to the speed of light, and therefore you have almost an infinite capacity to collect the entire 9.8, okay, of force. The differential will stay that number, because your speed, your increase in speed, has nothing to do with the speed of the force. So it only works, so like I said, this contrived math only works for one single circumstance, and that is circumstance controlled by gravity. Because there really is no other force that can be constant, either because it's not moving fast enough, or because it's not regular, it's not a consistent over time force. So anyway, so the bottom line, look, mgH, again, is just plain wrong. It's clearly the controlling mechanism is time. Time is in control. And it's time that'll tell you how many units of 9.8 you get. So however many units of time you are free falling tells you the answer. Now he does all these other experiments where he's using a ramp, okay, where friction will be applied to a ground surface, okay, and you will increase the amount of time, okay, you're exposed to the force, because you're going to be losing energy to the ground as you're rolling. And so you'll be the ratio will always have to be adjusted, okay, based on how much the coefficient of drag is. Now, whether the drag is, you've got it tied to you can also tie something to a string and have it pull a cart. And again, you have the same argument that you're now putting energy into friction, okay, and the motion of the cart. And those are both dragging the object. So the object will fall much slower, all right, it'll be in the gravity much longer, but it's also creating much more force, in the sense that it's not only its own velocity, which is much lower, but it's given the cart energy, velocity. And the fact is they'll minus the friction, the motions will all add up in the sense that the longer time will be seen in the velocity of the extra mass you're dropping. It's an extra mass essentially. You're using one mass to generate the force. The other mass isn't collecting any force, but it's essentially being added to this object. And that's the differential in the time. The amount of time it'll take for it to fall will be proportional to the amount of time it takes to move this mass, because it's not being pushed by gravity. You're dragging it. So it's really just about finding the drag coefficient, whether that is in the form of friction or whether it's in the form of adding an extra mass to the object. So that's what's really going on. This isn't free falling, okay? The 9.8 rule applies to free fall. And it still applies in this circumstance, but it's not obviously going to be explicitly 9.8 per 1 second, in the sense that you have to account for the fact that, yes, you'll be collecting that much force, but the force is going to be seen in the velocity of this object, not in the velocity of this object. So I don't need to say. Is there much more to say? I mean, this is the truth. This is the lie. Okay, they have zero evidence for this. They never get a right answer. So they use this formula, and they never get a right answer for energy. This will not tell you the force. Okay, F does not equal mgh. Force equals mgT. Okay, this always gets a wrong answer, because it's not recognizing that this is what really controls how much energy, okay, something is going to collect in free fall. Time decides. How long you're in the stream decides how much energy the stream can give your boat. How long you're in the wind decides how much wind can collect in your sail. It's all controlled by time, not anything called a distance. Distances are just emergent byproducts of collecting the force in units of time. Now, I could use the rolling ball example, and again, just illustrate the fact that you're going half your speed, okay, after you've traveled 3/4 of the distance. I mean, things that just don't add up to being, like, demonstrating that it is not a matter of how much distance there is, it's a, height. It's a matter of how much time. Enough of a video, I guess. There's no point, like I said, there's no communication. Nobody can make a rational counter argument. It's not Newton's physics. They just keep implying and lying that it is. They won't admit the simple truth. Not one of them will admit it. I mean, I can show the exact quotes where Newton is saying, twice the force, twice the velocity. 3 times the force, 3 times the velocity. And they'll keep lying and saying that somehow Newton actually believed that it's 3 times the force, 9 times. 9 times the force, only 3 times the velocity. When clearly that's not what he was saying. He clearly opposed it for the 40 years of his life. It was just nonsense. It's not Newton's physics, and they just keep lying that what they're talking is consistent with anything that Galileo, Descartes, or Newton said. Because it's not. It's only consistent with what Leibniz believed. And Leibniz believed that 4 pounds dropped 1 foot is the same energy as 1 pound dropped 4 feet, which it clearly isn't. So again, what can you do? You're just defending lying. You're just belligerently denying the truth. You deny the evidence that you don't have. I mean, not having evidence is almost the same, frankly, as having evidence. The very fact that you can't demonstrate something as obvious as 4 times the energy for going twice as fast. The fact that you can't demonstrate that to be true is proof that it's bullshit. In 300 years, you haven't been able to produce an experiment proving it. 300 years to produce the experiment, you can't do it. Speaking of which, the lying little putsy physicist Michael, he's supposed to be doing, he got, big, he's made a big Newton's cradle. with a 3 mass and a 1 mass. And he's supposed to show us the big free energy experiment. So for 3 months now, we're waiting. So apparently it was too tipsy before, and we had to do something to stop it from wobbling or some other kind of bullshit. So where is it? Where's the big free momentum experiment? Show me the free momentum experiment. Show me you creating free momentum. Then you can talk about your mgh once you show it to exist. All right. But anyway, till the next time and such. What's like I said? What's the fucking point? It's just Jesus. There's no audience, okay? I mean, if the fact is the world doesn't allow contrary opinions to be even referenced or heard. Again, you know, I mean, I've been doing this Google thing where you can track their Google's performance on your website, and yes, there's zero, zero keyword indexed references to any of my websites. I mean, Google just will not allow my content to be seen on the internet. And it's just all bullshit. It's pathetic that this is the world you people have chosen. You voted for it, frankly. Clearly. It's why the world sucks, is because basically the people, the democracy is full of a bunch of lying, putsy pieces of garbage. You're all jackasses, okay? And you won't drink clean water. Just scum-sucking, leechy pieces of cruddy bug life. Fucking, Jesus, get what you deserve. What you're already getting, frankly. You're going to get exactly what I'm not going to get what I deserve. You're going to get what you deserve.